Have you ever been asked to do something and then immediately felt like, wow, that's a really big ask? But instead of saying no, you just said yes anyway? And then later you felt frustrated, you felt drained, even maybe a little resentful? And this also might be showing up when you need to ask for something. You don't ask to be paid for what you're worth. Maybe you over deliver. You hesitate to ask for help because you worry about being a burden. And then somewhere inside, you're carrying that weight of trying to be a really good person, to be helpful, to be easy to be with. Well, if you're someone who is self-aware, who cares deeply about others, and you genuinely want your relationships to feel good, but you find yourself overgiving, afraid to hear no, or struggling and afraid to say no, then this episode is really for you. If we haven't met, I'm Judy K. Katz. I'm a transformational coach and a spiritual mentor. And for over 30 years, I've helped high-achieving women move beyond their subconscious survival patterns into a more conscious and empowered way of relating, where relationships become a place of connection rather than exhaustion or resentment. And in this episode, I'm going to show you why it feels so difficult to say no and why it's not your fault, and then what's actually happening inside of you, so you can begin to respond from an honest and confident place rather than from a place of guilt and resentment. Because what most people don't realize is that it's not that you don't know how to say no. It's that different survival parts of you are taking over. In a past video, I've used the Wizard of Oz as a metaphor to demonstrate this. There's a part of you that shows up strong and capable, in control, kind of like that giant make-believe wizard that everyone sees. But then behind the curtain, there's a more vulnerable part of you that feels afraid to be rejected and not accepted, just like the actual wizard who hid behind the curtain. So let's look at what's actually happening inside of you when asked to do something that you really don't want to, yet you still say yes. These are parts of you that want to keep things smooth and avoid conflict. So let's see if any of these archetypes feel familiar to you. The first set I want to talk about is the pleaser, the peacemaker, and the helper. And these parts believe, oh wow, if I say no, I might hurt their feelings, they're going to resent me. They might be upset and then they'll reject me. Maybe they'll pull away and then I'm going to lose the relationship entirely. Well, these parts are also protecting you from the pain that you'd feel if you asked someone and then they told you no. And then there's another set of archetypes, the avoider and the martyrer. Now, these parts would rather carry the weight alone than ask for help or avoid responding as long as it could. They don't want to feel the discomfort of saying no and then risking the relationship. And then there are those parts that they don't want to feel any fear at all. So they take on a little stronger stance, and they can become arrogant and dismissive, forceful, like making demands, even a little entitled and having a lot of high expectations. Now they say things like, well, they shouldn't have asked me. Who do they think they are? How dare they ask me to do that? Or they're taking advantage of me. Or maybe they owe it to me. But you see, underneath all of that, it's the same fear. The fear of being judged and rejected, not valued. So the difficulty saying no, and what's making it a big ask, it isn't really about the request itself. It's about what it feels like it means about you and what will happen to you if you say no. So let's just slow this down for a moment. And I'd like to invite you to think of a recent situation where you really wanted to say no and then you couldn't. And then just notice what happens in your body as you recall that. Do you feel any tension, like any pressure or tightness? Maybe there's constriction in your throat. And now I want you just to notice the thoughts. What are you afraid would happen? What would happen if you said no? Would they get upset? Maybe criticize you, or they would just quietly distance themselves? Now just notice, and please remember to breathe. See, the shift doesn't begin by forcing yourself to say no. It begins by recognizing which part of you is activated and what it's afraid of. And now you're bringing your awareness behind that inner curtain of concealment and protection. You begin to connect with the part of you that feels afraid of what it believes. And when you begin to see that, you're no longer reacting from that part. You're relating to it. And that's where your freedom begins. You can begin to respond consciously, from clarity, from self-respect, from your truth. And that's where your relationships begin to change. Not because you're doing more, but because you're being more honest with yourself. Because honesty, when it comes from a place of care, it benefits both of you, the other person and you. And that's very important to consider. So if saying or hearing no is something that you struggle with, I've created a guided meditation, Finding the Strength to Say No Without Guilt, to help you to connect with these parts of you that feel afraid to say no or to hear no. So you can begin to feel more grounded and more conscious and clear in those moments. Now, I placed that video link at the end of this video and also in the title description below, so you can readily access it. So if all of this resonated with you, I also invite you to please subscribe and please continue this journey with me toward becoming more aligned with your true, confident, and empowered self. You know, you are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that is something to be honored. So until next time, bye for now.